Our guest today is one of my favorite young minds in football, an offensive coach, but is someone who played the game and has coached the game on many different levels and is now in a brand new home. He is the offensive coordinator of the Atlanta Falcons, Mr. Zach Robinson. How are you, man?
Greg's great to see you, my man. How's the summer?
Oh, summer's been wonderful. Summer's been great. I don't know about you. Like, it's not negative. It's not that I dread it, but there's like you see the sands of time, the hourglass, and like I feel it now. Where after July 4th, it's like, all right, it's football time, and everyone's kind of getting that. Do you feel that as a coach? Like, or can
A
you
hundred
still
per
be? Yeah, you're not in chill mode
oh,
right now.
100%. Like once the 4th of July hits, like after that, like I was on the golf course yesterday and I couldn't stop thinking about first day of training camp and like what we're gonna do and the install. So I'm with you. Those first like couple weeks, you feel like you got forever, and then once 4th of July hits, man, you are football mode. But it's a good thing. You're always excited to go back, but you definitely feel the anxiousness of getting started.
You were in LA as a coach since 2019, all the way up to last year. Uh, Family still in LA? I always find this interesting, like when the transition is or when the school year ends, do you guys move to Atlanta? Like, where are you guys now?
So we got out here entirely too fast if we were to do it all over again. So you know the story about sure we'll probably talk about it, but my wife came out like 3 weeks after I got here. So I got here the first right before the Super Bowl, and then she was out at the end of February. So I mean it happened fast. We've been in Airbnbs, doing that whole deal with like two kids under two, which was an absolute nightmare, as you can imagine. But we made it through. We got into our house finally a couple months ago, so we're all settled in. But yeah, we were looking back at it. It's like, okay, if we were to do this transition again, probably waiting a little bit to get the house figured out before you just send the whole crew out. But made it work. Thank God I got a good wife that could put up with all of it, because it was a big change.
Well, I think you guys had a big week when you got the offensive coordinator gig in Atlanta. We'll go through your career and all that, but can you just take everyone through the personal and the career of that wild few days in Zach Robinson's life?
It was, yeah, you were on it. You knew about it right away. But yeah, I'll try to get the shortened version of it. But so my wife was very pregnant. Due date was coming up. Raheem was going through all the interview process. He was interviewing with everybody. He hadn't had it wasn't solidified he was going to Atlanta yet. And so my wife's, this is like say Sunday, uh, like January 21st, like right around there. And so, I was fortunate enough to get a few other, looks and some interviews and those things. And I was supposed to fly out to some places, and I had to kind of, say, hey guys, like wife's due any day. I have to put those on hold. And so fast forward to Thursday, Raheem gets the job in Atlanta. All the hoops that you still got to jump through to, make that stuff official and all that stuff. There was, had a good idea that I was going to go with Raheem, and we had talked about it for a long time. And um, so fast forward to Saturday, I'm actually on the phone with Sean at our house, and won't get into too much detail, but basically get off the phone with Sean. My wife comes out, and I'm like, you look like we got to go. Like we we
You can
we
tell.
got
I
to
get that look.
like we got to roll. And
You have that
so
birth look in your eyes.
yeah, I don't know what it is, but I think we got to keep it moving, because I don't know what to do. So we got to the hospital. Fast forward, 2 hours later, and really my agent Kyle McCarthy. It's funny saying my agent. He's like my best buddy. So I'm texting him. I'm like, hey, going to the hospital. Let me know what's going on with all this. And so he's like, hey, don't worry about it. Like, I won't bother you. Just take care of the business, whatever, and we'll figure it out later. So, of course, Kyle's texting me like all throughout, like when we're at the hospital. I'm like, dude, I thought you
Contract
said we weren't
details,
gonna. Yeah,
questions. Yeah.
yeah. So, it's like say like around 3:15, our son Cooper was born, and then, I mean, couldn't have been 15, 20 minutes later. Kyle's texting me. He's like, hey, you're good to go. Give me a call. I get a FaceTime from Raheem. I get some other calls for some other people with the Falcons. And I mean, next thing I know, like my wife's still like, all
Yeah,
the
yeah.
doctors are still like, so then I had to call some of the other coaches that were involved with, interviews. But yeah, I mean, it moved so fast. I mean, I still get crap from my wife like to this day. She's like, "You were on the phone 20 minutes after, our son," so I'll probably never hear the end of that, but it was
I
a
think it's a great
wild,
story. I think it's amazing. It's the start of a new life in real terms and a new life career wise for the family.
yeah,
And here you are in Atlanta. I love that story. I think it's cool.
that is
All right.
wild.
You've been a great coach for the Rams for many years. We've seen that McVay tree get picked apart, especially on the offensive side. Now it's your opportunity. You leave with Raheem, but let's start from the beginning. Grew up in Colorado, but you were a stud quarterback at Oklahoma State, and so good that you guys finished the regular season and you had 3,064 passing yards, 25 touchdowns. You go to the Senior Bowl, the whole deal. And you go to the Patriots and have an NFL career and bouncing around little Patriots, Seattle, Detroit, Cincinnati until 2013, where after 3 years in the league, you say, okay, I'm going to go on and explore their options. Getting to the NFL, what kind of experience was that for you? And then when did you know? Did the league tell you, or did you yourself say, okay, I think this thing is over?
Yeah, so I was, lucky to be around some really good players. Oklahoma State. We had Des Bryant was my receiver. I mean, I would just
Nice.
close my eyes and throw jump
Was
balls at
Kendall
him, and he
Hunter
was
there? I used to love
Kendall
Kendall
Hunter.
Hunter.
Kendall
Great
Hunter was
running
a
back.
stud. We had Brandon Pettigrew. Russell
Yeah, good
Okung
tight
was the
end.
left
Oh,
tackle.
wow.
I mean, we were stacked. So, we had some good teams there. My last like 3 years, and then yeah, always wanted to play in the NFL. Didn't know how realistic it was. I was always a little bit more of a kind of dual threat. Like I ran a decent amount in college too, and at that time it was still like the big pocket passer. Like
Yeah,
those were
yeah.
all the guys that were getting drafted, and so ended up, luckily getting drafted late to the Patriots. And then was just kind of scratching and clawing to stay on a roster, to practice squads. And so, like you mentioned, bounced around to 4 different places, and 4 years ended up having an elbow issue in my time in Cincinnati. So I had Tommy John. At that point, I kind of knew, it was probably going to be over. If you're a third string quarterback and you're in year 4 and you haven't elevated yourself to a backup, I mean, they're looking for that next crop of guys. So I was very aware of it. Always wanted to get into coaching. I always liked the one-on-one, coaching with quarterbacks. When I was in high school, working with younger guys. When I was in college, coming back and working with the high school guys. When I was in college, working with our younger guys. So I always enjoyed that kind of one-on-one training with quarterbacks. I started getting that going as I was rehabbing my elbow after I was done playing. Um, you're at a point where you're like, do I want to go into coaching? Am I good with this, or should I try something else? Like I did a couple job shadows at like a commercial real estate company, and I was like, no shot. Like I gotta have football. And so ended up reaching out to Pro Football Focus.
I love this.
Just wrote an email. I hadn't really didn't know anything about them. This was in, like you mentioned, like 2013,
Yeah.
2014. So they're still relatively, unknown at that point. But I knew they had access to film. And so I was like, all right, how can I pair up, working with some college quarterbacks, and Andy Dalton was a good buddy. I'd work with him in Dallas in the off season. And so how can I pair that up with, still having access to film and just seeing around the league and around college football, and watching quarterback play. So I actually heard back from Bobby Slowick. He was the first person that called me with
How
PFF.
funny. Where was Bobby at the
Uh,
time? He was at
Bobby
PFF.
was at PFF.
This is amazing to me. So in Cincinnati, Ohio, you got this Pro Football Focus for the listeners. They do a lot of analytics. Teams use them. Chris Collinsworth eventually purchased them, and now it's you see it everywhere. PFF, Pro Football Focus. But at the time, it was one of the first groups that were like, let's put numbers and analytics together. But you're right, they had all the film, and teams would pay a high premium, hundreds of thousands of dollars to get their data, but they also relied on them because they would watch the film. So Bobby Slowick, who is now one of the hot offensive coordinators of the league, down with Houston and CJ Stroud, and you, who at the time were just, an ex-player who's looking to find his way, you guys both were at PFF in 2013. This is fascinating.
Yeah, it was yeah. So Bobby and I ended up working closely for a couple years, and then
This is
obviously
amazing. I didn't know any of this. I love this.
he went to
And
the
how old is
Niners.
Bobby? He's 20 something?
Bobby's I think we're about the same age. He might be a little younger than me, like a year
Okay.
maybe.
All right.
So we're probably, let's say, like 29, 30, somewhere around there.
Yep.
And yeah, so Bobby and I were, breaking down coverages, watching film, just doing stuff underneath the PFF umbrella, but also, I'm sure like I was doing, just kind of had my own stuff as
Yeah.
I'm watching film, making
Were you
notes
guys
on
in the
around the
same
league. And
room? Were you guys in the same room watching stuff, or was it
so
separately?
Bobby was in Cincinnati. I went up there a couple times. I was
Yeah.
living in Dallas, where I was rehabbing my elbow. And um, so we would hop on calls all the time
I
and
love this.
talk through coverage, everything that was pertaining to the stuff with PFF. And then we would obviously have our own conversations just about football on the side as well. So yeah, kind of just kept up with around the league stuff with PFF, right after that. And then, I knew, you know, as Schrags, like you got to have a wife that's like all
No,
in on like, okay.
come
And
on.
so I met my wife, and I kind of mentioned I was, wanted to get into coaching, and she's like, yeah, of course. Like, let's do, had no idea what we were
It's your
actually getting into.
passion.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. So she was ultra supportive. Um, and then, yeah, I was actually training, quarterback Easton Stick,
Yeah,
with
North Dakota
Rep,
State.
yeah, with Rep One, and there was a connection there with Sean, McVay, and that group. And so got an interview with Sean, and then next day got hired. And obviously always going to be forever grateful for Sean giving me that first opportunity, but definitely moved fast. From that whole time of, hey, are we, I'm working with PFF, I'm training guys on the side, and okay, now we're in it, we're coaching. And so it definitely was a whirlwind, but shoot, it's been awesome.
When you're at PFF and you're doing all this stuff, did you ever feel like imposter syndrome, or like you weren't in the cool crowd, you're on the outside? Because I think that's a humbling thing to be like, all right, I'm not going to be with a team, I'm not with it, but like I'm with this other organization. And when we go to the combine, remember you and I met when you were with PFF at the time, and I'm like, Zach Robinson, the former player? You're like, yeah, of course. And I'm like, how cool is that? This guy's like, this is my access in. It's not the traditional route. Did you ever feel doubt going there, or like you were so self-confident that this is just what it's going to take for me to get to my path to coaching?
Yeah, I honestly, of course you want to be in the mix, and that was the hardest thing. You're in the locker room like as a player, and you just miss that aspect of it. Um, and so there were times where I was like, man, I got to just jump in. I had some opportunities to go to college, and I really wanted to coach in the NFL. And so I knew that as long as I was staying close to the game and staying up with things, that, hopefully an opportunity would come up. I was at a point where, before I got hired with the Rams, I was like, all right, whatever opportunity comes, like we're going. And so I had
Yeah.
a couple, college, like Oregon, and a couple of colleges that I was looking to go to if I didn't get a job with the Rams and Sean. So but yeah, absolutely. You miss like just being with the guys. Like that's why you want to get into coaching, is being a part of something, greater than yourself, working towards a goal with a bunch of guys. So yeah, I felt there was some imposter syndrome, for sure, when I was working with PFF.
And you get there, and the Rams guys love you. Who's on that coaching staff those first couple of years? I know it's been
Oh
a
man, it
rotating
was,
door, but let's go through the tree just for the listeners can realize the brain trust that was in the building talking
yeah,
offense every
no,
day.
unbelievable guys to be around and learn as a young coach coming in. Like you're a player, but like you really have no idea until you get into it. So my head's spinning. There's so much to learn. But worked with Shane Waldron. I was assistant quarterback coach. Shane was a quarterback coach that first year. Wes Phillips was on staff. You had Aaron Cromer. You had Kevin O'Connell comes in the next year in 2020. You got Liam Cohen, who's one of my best buddies. I know, shoot, Liam and I have had some good times together at Sean's wedding. And then you got like Thomas Brown comes through. I mean, there's so many guys, so many great coaches that you're learning a ton from. Like Wes Phillips, to this day, like I can still hear some of the things that I would hear Wes talk about, whether it's with the tight ends or in the pass game. And so you're around a bunch of good dudes, all love ball, all with the same mindset, and just forever grateful to be around those guys. And those guys just open up everything, and to somebody that really, you think but like I said, you just have no idea until you're actually in it.
What's Sean's special sauce that you try to take with you that all these guys work for him and they leave, they go elsewhere, but there's never any bad blood, and it always feels like they take the best attributes that he has. What did you learn from McVay all those years watching him run a room?
Yeah, there's most dynamic person, as you know, Schrager, that you'll ever be around. As a leader from that standpoint, the way that he can pull guys together, the way that he can get the best out of everybody, whether it's the top guys at the roster, bottom guys at the roster, a young coach, older coaches, everybody. There's such an urgency with Sean, that he wants to be the best, that just rises everybody else in the building to his level, and so always will be forever, grateful for the things that, whether I realized at the time I was learning from them, but now that I have kind of obviously been away for a few months, realize like, oh, those little things that maybe I didn't really know at the time, are kind of creeping into my head about something that came up in 2021 or 20,
Yeah.
just different experiences. Obviously was there for 5 years, so got to see had a lot of ups, and there's obviously some downs as well that just come with the game. Um, but yeah, they're just so dynamic, the urgency, and then obviously the way that Sean sees the game is unique, and it's the best in the NFL in terms of how he can package plays and put together a game plan, and then feel the flow of the game as it's going as a play caller, and so all those things that you know most people hear about, but being able to see it up close and just see him operate on a day-to-day basis, there's going to be things that 15, 20 years down the line, I'm going to be still pulling from Sean.
It's funny. I talked to him obviously, and that Super Bowl season was such a ride, and there was so much pressure, and it was so cool to watch like the Rams like actually finish and seal the deal, especially the way they did in the final drive, and you guys getting contributions from Ben Skaralnik and like just figuring it out and just piecing it together with Odell out and injury issues everywhere else, and still getting away to get the Super Bowl. I Last year, 2022, down year, but there were some learning things. I think Sean had more fun, and I could tell that this team really enjoyed the 2023 season almost as much as the Super Bowl season, being there firsthand and having no expectations going into the season. People talking about the Rams tanking for Caleb Williams. Um, just I know we're a couple months removed, but just like how cool was last year's ride, getting to the wild card round and almost beating the Lions in their building?
Oh, it was a blast. Like just the reset that it took from that 2022 season, like you mentioned, to showing up that first day of the 2023 off season. It was like, hey, like we're attacking this thing, and we're going to go all in. We're going to be there for each other every single day. And Sean's resiliency through the whole thing was obviously spread throughout the building. And it was a blast though. We had fun. It was obviously you got Matthew Stafford, and his level of urgency raises the entire building as well. He played out of his mind, especially down the stretch there. And then just, obviously Puka and the way the offensive line played and the way that the defense played. I mean, you go into that season and you're looking around and you're like, man, how's this going to all come together? And the way that Ra got those guys going on that side of the ball. It was just it was something like you mentioned, like the 21 season, obviously that was pretty special, but I think we'll always remember that season, those guys that were in it, and just knowing that feeling of what it was like starting that off season, and then just the messaging that was so consistent throughout the year, from Sean and from the rest of the staff, that it was a special year. Still wish we could have obviously kept going there, but that was a tough atmosphere up in Detroit, man. That place was
No
rocking.
doubt.
That was an unbelievable game.
Give me a good Puka story. Like, when did you know that this kid, Puka Nacua, was going to be special? Fifth round pick out of BYU. There was a little buzz in training camp, but then he had
Yeah,
one of the greatest seasons we've ever seen from a rookie receiver.
yeah, he like in the spring, you saw like his aggressive hands. I mean, he's got unbelievable hands. Like Stafford, I remember always would be like, I feel like I can throw the ball as hard as I want to when he's 5 yards away and he's just gonna pluck it. And so that comfort for a guy like Matthew who's gonna put it into some tight windows, you're like, okay. And then you see him moving around and he was slipping a little bit, running some routes, and he's learning just the route tree that he's gonna be asked to do in that offense. And but really, I think it was like the first like couple weeks of camp, like you saw once the pads really came on, you saw how physical he was, and you saw just like just his mentality day to day when he was playing football, like he just was an absolute dog. And so him on game days, like, I mean, you've seen his hair, like it's going everywhere. Like there'd be times where like he'd be sitting on the bench like this, and he looks like Wolverine, like his
Yeah,
hair is
yeah,
just
yeah.
coming down out of his, and you're like, Puka, you good? He's like, yes, coach, and you're just like, oh, this guy's
Okay, you dialed in.
savage. Yeah. So he's one of those guys that the lights come on, and he's just a football player. And he's a great player.
Obviously, you've got relationships all over the league. Raheem Morris, though, he taps you on the shoulder and says, "Hey, let's take whatever we got here in LA and let's bring this juice to Atlanta. Come with me." That's a big decision to leave, but you did. You took the leap of faith. What's Raheem bring to the table, and how excited are you to start this new chapter in your career?
I'm pumped to work with Ra. Ra and I's offices were right across from each other for the last 3 years. So we're constantly popping in and out. Hey, come check this out. And so was really able to learn a ton from a defensive perspective from Ra. But then, most people know that he coached receivers, but Ra's got a great offensive mind as well. So that's what's exciting for me as a first time doing this, knowing that, I got a head coach and a guy that, first of all, I love being around every single day. And Ra, like guys that know him, it's like he's never had a bad day. He's best dude ever,
He
great
might be the most
leader.
charismatic person in football.
Yeah, honestly, maybe I've ever met in
And
my
I think
life. I mean,
McVay would say that too. Like Sean would say that as well.
yeah, I agree. Both those guys together, I mean, you can't get a word in, obviously. So you're just sitting there listening. But no, Ra's the best and great defensive mind. But he loves offense, so it's fun. Shoot, we're texting a couple of weeks ago. Hey, what if we did this on this? And so to
Yeah.
have that from a head coach going into it for the first time, knowing that I'm going to have some blind spots that need to be filled. Pumped to work with Rock, continue to keep learning from him. The way that he sees the game on both sides of the football situationally, he's going to help me out a ton. So definitely pumped to get it going and knowing it's going to be a fun work environment. No matter what, through the ebbs and the flows, Rod does not change from day to day. So it'll be fun season, challenging of course, but definitely excited to work with Rod and the rest of the guys.
All right. So the Falcons offensive roster. I mean, I think they're the first team since the 50s. I remember the stat, the draft, to draft a skill position in the top 8, like 4 straight years. You get Pitts in London, Bijan Robinson, and now Penix. When you look at this roster on paper, and then we're going to get into what you're seeing on the field in the spring, but like this has to be a dream come true. You also have Algier, the other running back who I love out of BYU. This guy can gobble up yards. Like you guys have a loaded roster on offense. It just hasn't all come together yet. That's a great place to walk into.
No, 100%. Definitely very fortunate to walk into a situation like this. Doesn't happen very often. The one thing that we weren't sure about, obviously when Rod got the job and we were coming with him was the quarterback. That got solved with signing Kirk. And so if you were to say which job is the best job out there, and Kirk Cousins is a quarterback, you're like, I mean, it's obviously a no-brainer. It's a really good spot to be. So very lucky that we got some great guys. The guys here, personnel wise, Terry, Kyle Smith, Ryan Pace, those guys have done an unbelievable job assembling the roster. It's a bunch of great guys that love football, very similar to how it's set up in LA, just like
Yeah.
guys that love ball, that are, really talented. So you look at Bijan, you look at Drake, you look at Kyle Pitts, and then the offensive line is really what makes that thing go. And so having
Talk
all
about those
5 of
big
those
boys.
guys,
Because yeah,
oh, I
they're
mean, you go
they're
left to right.
good.
Jake Matthews looks like he might play another 10 years,
Yeah.
honestly. I mean, he looks great. He's had an unbelievable career. Matthew Bergeron, the left guard, second year out of Syracuse. He's going to continue to make strides. Expect him to be one of the better guards in the league. Drew Dahlman, the center from Stanford, 4th-round pick. We loved him in LA when he was coming out. And so, and then you got the best guard in football in Lindstrom, who his work ethic and just the way that he plays the game is just like he doesn't have to say anything, but you see the way that he plays, and that raises everybody's level. And then you got big Caleb McGarry over there, the right
Yeah.
tackle, who's a monster. So having that solidified is big time, especially for for the QBs and for us in the pass game. Being able to hold up front, we should be able to run the football. So there's a lot of great things. Got a long way to go. I was pumped about where we left the spring off, but shoot, as you know, in year one of the system, like there's so many things to cover, and so we still got a long way to go. Wish we could actually start tomorrow just to make sure we
Yeah.
we get everything going, but we got plenty of time.
long way to go, first year in the system, and yet no one has seen it on film yet, which gives you an advantage as well. Bijan Robinson, just take a minute to just what you looked at in college, what you looked at last year, and just I have to imagine when you're an offensive coordinator and you're given something like that talent, the passing game, the running game, the blocking game, like you have to be just like, how do I limit my usage on this guy because I want to use him
Yeah.
every single play.
Yeah, no doubt, 100%. That is honestly, it's a good problem to have, but you're exactly right. But the first time I saw Bijan was we had a bye week in 2022. Went back to Oklahoma State. They were playing Texas that week. Had a bunch of family that was there. So went to the game. Had known Bijan because I watched a ton of college football, but seeing him play in person, I was like, you can give this guy the ball every single play, and he's going to make a play. And I think he had 150 yards rushing, over 50 yards receiving. I mean, they ended up losing the game. The Ewers threw a few picks, and Oklahoma State won. But that was my first time seeing him play in person. I was like, this guy's going to be an unbelievable pro. And then seeing him up close, he was a little bit banged up in the spring. So we only got to see just a couple weeks of him. But he'll be full go, ready to go once camp starts. But you just throw on the tape from last year and his ability to make guys miss, and there's really nothing he can't do. But it's still priority is like, hey, you're a running back. We can certainly use you out of the backfield as a receiver. I mean, he can run wide receiver routes, but you just
Yeah.
obviously don't want to overload him too much, like you were kind of alluding to. But excited to work with Bijan. He's a great guy. Just loves ball. Like he's watching Christian McCaffrey and watching running backs around the league. Like he has that mindset that he wants to be the best. So looking forward to to getting the ball as much as we can to Bijan for sure.
Kyle Pitts, a real early pick for a tight end. Like I just what what's interesting with him is that like he's got these high expectations. So I'm not for sure he's ever going to reach what people expected of him, but he still puts up numbers. He still has good seasons. Like, are you excited to get your hands on Kyle Pitts and kind of get the most out of him?
Yeah, 100%. I think Kyle is excited to. First of all, he was banged up a little bit last year. So he was, battling through some injuries but from the jump, right when, we got the job here, Kyle was like one of the first ones in the building,
I
coming,
love
saying
that.
what's up to Ra, saying, sitting in my office, hanging out with TJ Yates and Kevin Koger, new tight end coach. Like he was around in, March and before the guys even got there. So his level of urgency, he wants to take that next step. He wants to be a complete tight end. I think it's underrated how good of a blocker he actually is. You see, the receiver skills, but when he wants to put his hand in the ground and block, like he can do it. So
6'6".
he wants to do it all, and that's what we'll do with him. And but excited for him to take a big step. I know he's chomping at the bit to kind of get some a little bit of a bad taste out of his mouth from last year, which a lot of it, like I said, was injuries. But no, pumped to work with him. Seeing the rapport that him and Kirk got going during the spring a little bit was encouraging. So it's all positive for Kyle.
All right, let's go through the timeline real quick here. You get the job in January. February is the combine. March, you guys signed Kirk Cousins. April's the draft. Do you remember like the 15 minutes at the combine with Michael Penix? Was there a 15-minute meeting? Like I just take me through the Cousins pick, and then when did you have a feeling that okay, Penix, there's something to this kid if he's there at 8 as well?
Yeah, I think we sent TJ Yates and Ken Zampese went to the combine and interviewed all those quarterbacks. So we videoed it and we ended up watching it later on that night after we interviewed Mike. Had known about Mike just from watching college football, and obviously Washington was on a ton over the last couple of years, and I mean you're seeing all the explosive plays that him and those three receivers were making, all over the place, and so you're studying the film and you sign Kirk and you're so pumped about that to have a guy like Kirk that's, comfortable with the system, obviously playing some of the better football that he's played throughout the last couple of years, really his entire career. So look forward to him, continuing to do that. And then the ability to add Mike was unique, obviously. We felt strongly about it in that position. I think it's been well documented, just the ability for him to sit and learn and watch and soak everything up before he would have to play whenever that ends up being was a positive. But remember watching the Texas game,
Yeah.
that they played, and obviously
Semifinals.
he was lights out in that game. And then you really start diving into the film, and you're watching it throughout the spring, and you're seeing kind of how things could piece together with this offense, and you got Kirk, and then being able to add Mike was too good to pass up. So pumped to have both those guys because shoot, as you know, like
Oh, I get it.
you
Quarterback.
got you got to have one, you got to have two, and so we feel great about both those guys there.
Well, people were going bonkers after the pick about how ridiculous it was. But if you didn't have a pass rusher ranked as high as Penix, and he's sitting there at 8 and you like him, you got to think Cousins coming off an injury is 36. And, the last few years in Atlanta, they've been in quarterback purgatory. That's how I looked at it. And it's all right. Now we've got two options and one guy for the long term future. Now that's easier said than done. As a coach, there might be some egos you have to massage a bit too. What has been the dialogue with those guys in the quarterback room, or has it all just been cool? Everyone's been understanding of the situation. They come in, or did you come in with a game plan being like, I want to get Penix his reps during the spring and get him going, but we have to focus on Kirk. He's our guy.
Yeah, no, everything has been tailored around Kirk. Like that is where we're going. That's what we're doing. And Mike is such a humble guy. Kirk, obviously, one of the best guys I've ever been around just in life. So those two guys could not mesh better together just because of who they are as people. And so Mike's come in. He knows, where he's standing. He's got a long way to go. He's learning. He's observing Kirk with everything he does. Mike doesn't have to say a bunch of meetings. He's just listening to Kirk. And then he's got a great way of knowing when to ask something and when to just kind of take a step back and let Kirk go. So their dynamic has been good. Everybody, you're constantly competing, whether you're competing against the other guys on other rosters or the guys that are currently on your roster. Like that brings out the best in everybody. And that goes for you, that goes for me, that goes for everybody. So whenever you have that good competitive urgency, it's a good thing. So both guys will channel it the right way. But like I mentioned, both just humble guys, a lot of fun to be around, and obviously super talented and a lot of fun to just watch play quarterback. So it's good.
I love watching left-handed quarterbacks. Has Penix unleashed a pass in camp or around the facility at any point where you're just like, that is just so pretty? Because I saw him at the combine. I took a video of it. Him in like the hotel, just like whipping these perfect, and then at
In
the
the
combine
hallways
himself.
and yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
dude. Like it's like I don't know what it is, if it's the lefty or if it's the way he releases the ball. I think he's already got one of the prettiest passes in all of football. And I watched it for many years at Indiana. Then, of course, Washington, like seeing it up close, Penix just letting that thing release with that spin. Is it that special?
Yeah, he's a pure thrower, as pure of a guy that I've been around, just strictly throwing the football. So I'm with you. There's been times where he makes something happen, and you're kind of looking around like, man, that was a pretty special throw. So he's definitely got that going for him. He's got some great instincts, sees the field well. So, but like I mentioned, got a long way to go with this whole thing, but he definitely can throw the football, and that's one of the reasons we were excited to get him.
And Kirk has taken it in stride, and Kirk's in the right place going into July, I would imagine, as with training camps advance.
Yeah, Kirk had a great spring. Really took, especially for us as new coaches coming in, and when you have a quarterback that has as much experience as he does, especially in this system. I mean, there were days that Kirk just grabbed the entire group when we couldn't be out there with the guys, and he's taking guys through jog throughs, and he's coaching them up on the routes. And so the comfortability that I have and the rest of the coaching staff has with Kirk, and how he can just his ownership just with everything that he does, and his intent behind everything. So he had a great spring. Was fun to see him. Have watched him for so long, and
Yeah.
always just respected the way that he plays the game and the way that he sees it and how he can click through progressions and how accurate he is. But then you finally see it up close, and you're like, man, there are some days you come off the field and like everything's gonna be fine, because this guy, as long as we distribute the field and have sound schemes, running the football, throwing the football, this guy can make a lot of things right. So it was really fun to just finally get working with Kirk, and we'll just continue to build that rapport with the rest of the guys, and I'll get continue to get a feel for what he likes and those type of things. So it's all been really good though.
It's cool that you have a veteran quarterback. I feel like you and Stafford spoke the same language, and really since he got to the Rams, of course, Kevin was there, and then you took over that kind of role in his year with Sean, of course. Like The connective tissue is nuts. So Kevin O'Connell and you work together. Kevin O'Connell's just coached Cousins the last several seasons. Raheem probably was on staff in Washington when Cousins was there, I would imagine, right?
Yes. Yep. Yeah, he
Yeah,
was.
and McVay was, on staff there as well. So this is no like there's enough connective tissue where you and Cousins have so many people in common that this has to be pretty cool that you could finally get together. And now instead of having rookie quarterback, which you could have easily had as a first year offensive coordinator, and Slowick had it last year, it's no, I've got 36-year-old veteran who has seen it all and also knows a lot of the same people that I do.
100%. No, we've been able to talk about different relationships with guys or what they called something in Minnesota. Hey, we call that here, we call that this now. And so that's been so easy to talk with Kirk about, football stuff, but also just, hey, Chris O'Hara was his quarterback coach. And so I know Chris O'Hara, just different guys that you've been around. Hey, what was Wes Phillips like? What were some of the jokes Wes Phillips told on set?
Yeah.
Just some of the little stories that are just easy to make connections. So no, it's been great to have Kirk and having a veteran guy that can't wait to just see his career continue to go because he's playing before he got injured last year. I mean, Peter, like he was playing
Oh, dude.
as good as any
Lights out.
quarterback in the league. So I'm excited to see him just kind of keep that going.
All right, couple of rapid fire questions as we wrap this. This has been awesome. Your best Des Bryant story. You were his quarterback in college, an absolute freak show in college and in the NFL. When did Des show you that this guy is a step above everybody else on the field?
He right when he got there as a true freshman, we knew who he was coming in. Like as players, we were like, "Oh man, like this guy was a 4-star recruit and could have gone a number of different places." We ended up snagging him. But that first summer, he would always be like the first guy out on the field. I always went out there early to start warming up, but he was like him and I would like almost be out there at the exact same time, and he just loved to play catch, loved to throw, loved to catch. And so that's when I started kind of getting a feel for him. And he would run some routes sometimes where like he would change his tempo. Like I remember throwing him like an in cut, like a 12-yard in cut. And he came out of it, and I thought I was putting it at a place, right out in front of him. He ended up speeding it up and just to catch it like one-handed on his back
Yeah.
shoulder, like totally unnecessary. But it was routes on there, and he's just showing off like the stuff he could do, and obviously the stuff above the rim that he could do was unlike really anybody in college football. I mean, he's a special guy, but he loved football, loved just playing catch. During the summer, I think that's where our rapport really kind of skyrocketed. I'd throw something up and see what he could do. He could, see the spots that he could get to it. And, but yeah, he just loved throwing and catching, being around football, just total ball guy. And then as a competitor, I haven't really been around many guys like Dez.
I had Kellen Moore on last summer, and he was talking about his favorite Matthew Stafford throws when he was his backup in Detroit. Your favorite Matthew Stafford pass, if you can go through them all, whether it be big clutch passes in the playoffs a couple of years ago or something you saw in camp. What's your Stafford
Yeah.
memory of just the freak
Um,
show that is Matthew Stafford?
I mean, the Super Bowl no look is in that moment was unbelievable. I couldn't believe how he can no look those with receivers going from right to left and his
Yeah.
eyes being this way and throwing it that way while still keeping the ball out in front. I mean, some of those that you would see in practice every day. Matthew and I were teammates in Detroit in 2010 as I was, making my way around. And I'll never forget, he was injured the first year I was there, and that was the reason I got to Detroit. He separated his shoulder. I was with Seattle on their practice squad, so Detroit claimed me off of waivers. And so I was there the rest of the season. Matthew wasn't playing, but then fast forward to training camp to training camp. And that was the first time I got to see Matthew really play up close. I'd seen him throw. We went to the Manning camp together.
Oh,
Had
wow.
seen him
Okay.
throw, up close and personal for the first time when I was a sophomore in college. And he was going into his junior year. And I was like, that looks different than anything I've ever seen. And so I went back and I was like, I got no shot at playing in the NFL if this is what it looks like. But I do remember one throw in specific when I was in Detroit with Matthew. Um, Calvin Johnson was basically running like a corner pump, and it was a cover 2 look. Matthew looked off the safety one way, looked off the safety the other way. Calvin did his job on the route, and I was standing right behind it, and this ball went 70 yards in the air, perfect spiral, Calvin just in stride. And I'll never forget what that looked like coming out of his hand. It was just like 70 yards, just
Superhuman.
absolute dime. So,
Who was that
uh,
against? We'll have the clip
no,
behind it. Do you remember?
no, this was in practice. This is just in practice, in training camp
Practice.
practice. Was just, I was like, you know, something you just never see. But some of the ones in games last year, yeah, there were so many throws he had. But that one definitely sticks out just as a player watching it and knowing like what it's supposed to look like. Obviously, no pure thrower in the history of the game really is than Matthew.
Odell comes a couple of years ago, and he comes with all this hoopla, and then he gets there, and he's just like an awesome player for the Los Angeles Rams. And really, I know the love that that franchise has for him for the one season he was there. Your thoughts on Odell, your memories of Odell, and maybe a good Odell story.
Yeah, he came in and right off the bat, like just fit in with the guys. Like didn't really know you don't know what somebody's like until they're actually in the building, whether that's a coach, player, anything. You can hear whatever you want, but as soon as you get to know the guy, just brought a ton of juice to our offense. I mean, just obviously he's got the most swag in the history of the game, maybe. But he came in and there was a little learning curve those first couple weeks. For some reason, I was playing catch like pregame one day, and so then from that point forward, like I was kind of
That
his
was your guy.
pregame throwing guy, and so the stuff that I would see from him in pregame warmups, like obviously he wasn't doing like with the Giants, like he was
Yeah.
going to the back of the end zone and doing all that. At this point, he was just a little more casual, but still, pulling in one handers, but not jumping, like he was back in New York. But I do remember throwing a ball to him in pregame warmups before the Niner game, the first game he was there. And I was standing on the right side. This is pregame warmups, like we're on the team period, but guys are kind of, how the tempo is,
Yeah.
in pregame. And he's like, "Hey, I'm gonna go on this one a little bit." I was like, "All right." And so I throw him a go ball on the right side, and he's running and he's tracking this thing, and I'm like, it's over his outside shoulder.
Yeah.
I'm like, when is he gonna? I'm like, when is he gonna
When's he going to
adjust?
extend?
And
Yeah.
when is he gonna adjust and do this? And he just keeps stride like this, and then he just goes, and he just plucks it with his right hand and just keeps going. I like turned around and Ajiro Evero was standing back there like, what the hell was that? Like we just the ball skills that he had. I've never seen like an athlete like him. Like we play catch, I'd throw it to him, he'd throw one back right-handed. Next time he'd throw one left-handed.
Yeah.
Next time you would punt it right-footed and it'd be like perfect. And then the next time you would punt it left-footed, it would be. I mean, he just got some unbelievable just hand-eye, and he's just a great athlete. But he brought so much juice that season, man. He's just
loves football, but also loves fashion, loves soccer. I still think he's like the NFL's Renaissance man, and now he's in
yeah.
Miami, so I'm curious to see how that goes. But like, I thought I love the Odell era in LA, and I know how much you guys
That was great.
appreciate him.
Yeah, it was
Yeah.
great. No, he was a big reason where obviously we were able to get there.
Last couple, the big pass to Cooper Kupp that Stafford throws against Tampa in the playoffs. Where were you for that pass, and what'd you think when you guys actually pulled that off?
Yeah, it was first of all a great call by Sean going tempo in that moment. Ball was out of bounds on the left side on Tampa sideline, and Sean, typically, hey, out of bounds, 2-minute drill, let's huddle up. Sean had a feeling. We ended up just getting right on the ball, and so it's well documented. It was a cover zero look. I always stood kind of even with the ball, basically like a little bit behind it. And so you're kind of watching our guys, you're watching the back end, and you saw it went to, cover zero, and you're like, right away, you're
Are you
like,
guys all freaking out? Like covers it, like we have this. This is there.
yeah,
Like
it was like but it happened so fast that you're kind of just like,
hoping
oh,
Matthew
it's
sees it,
zero.
right? Like
And he's gonna see it because he sees everything. But yeah, that the ball traveling through the air, like once Matthew spotted it, and obviously the trajectory and the ball that he threw, the ball seemed like it was in the air for like 10 seconds. But obviously drops in the bucket. But yeah, definitely was a memory I'll always, have, and will always have, just how that happened, seeing the juice that Matthew had after he completed that, coming to the sideline. Like he said some stuff. I was like, you were in a dark place, man. Like
yeah.
he was feeling it. And so
Yeah.
it was pretty cool. That locker room celebration was awesome. But yeah, what an unbelievable play by those two guys in that moment to make that happen was pretty cool.
That rivalry you guys had with the Niners these past several years, and you go back and forth, and then finally you guys beat them in the playoff game, and then they go back to the Super Bowl, and it's heated. Now you're in the NFC South. Is it strange for you to be like, all right, I need to kind of readjust, and there's now three other teams that I have to kind of look at and be like, those are our chief rivals? Or
Yeah.
does that Niners logo still, as we sit here in July, just rub you wrong?
No, those games were so physical, so intense. You knew the week leading up, like it was like, man, okay, buckle your chin straps. It's playing the Niners. That'll always kind of just the way that those guys play football and the way that Kyle gets those guys going. No matter if you're in the division or out of the division, you always got your eyes on the Niners. But yeah, it's definitely been different resetting and seeing this group of guys. I feel like Tampa pretty well. Just we played them so many times in the last handful of years. And then played New Orleans last year. Carolina, don't know much about, but it's cool because we do have some coaches on staff that have been here for the last 3 years. So I'm looking at it like, hey, who's 59 here, and
Yeah.
they're able to kind of give a little bit of a scoop on different players, and so. But yeah, it's different resetting. That you get to know that division so well. You're there for 5 years. The Cardinals. The Seahawks. The evolving door that's come with the defensive backs for the Niners, and
Yep.
so learning a new division is definitely going to be a little bit different, but it's also a good challenge at the same time.
Last question. We are now really a week and a half away from stepping in there and giving the first, training camp team meetings and all that. As we head towards your first season as an offensive coordinator, your first season with the Atlanta Falcons, what would be your message to Falcons fans about the offense that they can expect?
Yeah, we're anticipating playing an exciting brand of football. We want to play fast before the snap, after the snap. We want to play physical. We want to be aggressive at all times. We want to play with great urgency. We want to mix the tempo. So hopefully we can put this thing together. Got a great group of guys to do it. Got a long way to go. Got training camp, and we got to get just our identity and our foundation really set. We left the off season, like I mentioned earlier, in a great spot. Now we just got to pick it up, and that level of urgency just got to crank up a little bit. But can expect we're going to throw the football. We're going to put the ball in the air. We're also going to be able to control the ball, run the football, hopefully. So it should be an exciting season, and we can't wait to get going.
Should I take Bijan Robinson first overall in fantasy football? Would that be the
I don't know
question?
anything about
I
fantasy
hear you.
football.
Me neither.
You
I tried
but
making a statement that would like go viral. I don't know. I don't play fantasy either. Like I don't. That was a bad attempt. Yeah.
but I mean, probably. I mean, I don't know why not.
He's good. Yeah, he's great.
Yeah.
Zach Robinson, this was so fun. Thank you for the hour. I also think we learned a lot. The PFF stuff is really cool. Really, as we wrap, anything you've taken from those days that you apply today?
Yeah, there's certain data that you might look at that you kind of like, you're obviously, football is football and you're always going to learn off the tape. But there are some things just from a data standpoint that you can look at that might help you out. But the way those guys really opened up your mind to looking at football in a different way, which I think is always cool. Like nobody's ever going to be stuck. There's not just one way to do it. And so just seeing kind of their perspective from a analytical side, and some of the aggressiveness, whether it be on fourth downs or 2 point whatever it might be, those things creep in your mind a little bit, knowing what the PFF analytics might say. But you're obviously going to make those judgments based on different situations, and it's not just a black and white thing. But definitely grateful for those guys, and Neil Hornsby, who founded PFF, was instrumental in just my development of just watching football and being able to have the access to everything that PFF had. So, but yeah, definitely taking a lot from those guys for sure.
So cool. I'm wishing you so much luck. You've got about 15 days or maybe 10 days left. Go enjoy two kids under the age of 2 and a new
Yeah,
home in Atlanta. Tell your wife she's a rock star. Zach Robinson, thanks for joining the podcast, man.
thanks, Rex. Appreciate you, man.